So I'm going to be moderating this morning. I hope that's okay. And please join me in welcoming our panelists to the stage. First up, we have Brad Thoburn, Assistant Secretary of Strategic Development from the Florida Department of Transportation. Brad, come on up. Our own Shane Lillibridge from Headquarter Hyundai, our Customer Relations Manager. Come on up, Shane. And Murat Babur from who is the Global Director of Battery Management Systems at Microvast. Come on up. All right, this is an exciting topic. We've got a packed room, and I know we've got a lot of folks who have a lot of questions about how we get from here to there, so let's dig in. Any friends have an electric vehicle that you know of? All right, today, they're becoming a lot more commonplace than they were even 5 years ago. And so let's talk a little bit about why we have seen such growth. In 2011, there were only 16,000 electric vehicles on the road in the entire United States. As of last year, there were more than 2 million. While this is still a very small percentage of the number of cars in the U.S., do you think this trend is going to continue over the next 10 years? We'll start with Brad.
Well, I may be the least qualified to answer that on this panel, but I'll leave.
That's why you get to go first. You're not going to steal any of the good stuff.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting to look around and see, and I don't have an EV, but I plenty of folks around in my neighborhood do, and so it's interesting to watch and see the growth. We do anticipate growth certainly continuing. I always look at, I'm sort of, one of my favorite things to look at or a model is the hype cycle that Gartner produces, and I kind of look at that, and it really applies nicely to AVs, because you get into that sort of irrational exuberance, and then you go into the trough of disillusionment, and then you kind of climb out of that. And so AVs, I kind of know where we are with AVs, but the EVs are kind of tough to figure out, because you kind of had the hybrids, then the plug-in hybrid, and now the battery electric, and I'm like, are we starting back over in the hype cycle, or are we coming out into that plateau? And I feel like it's the latter, just because the technology is clearly moving quickly and addressing some of those barriers, and the market's really addressing some of the barriers. I think we're going to talk about a little bit later, but our perspective and my perspective is that we're kind of projecting out different models in terms of what the growth could be, and it's we're kind of looking anywhere from by 2030 10 to 35% of the market. So
big growth. Shane, yeah. What say you on the growth?
Well, it's the new technology. The new technology that is coming out and being developed just gives us more options. And that's why the growth is going to be there. Right now, we're looking at, 300 to 500 miles per charge. 10 years from now, you might not even have to charge it anymore. It might just charge itself. And so those options are going to give the average driver, more flexibility in what they want. They're going to be able to make that choice. Speaking of technology,
Murat, what do you say?
Yeah, on that note, exactly the range anxiety about everybody has, is my car is going to run out of batteries and all that is going to be a thing in the past. So we are really developing on running long-lasting batteries with more safety. And also now the battery has proven itself to robust. And you guys can all now see there are batteries around more than 10 years, and that anxiety is also going away. So with the advancement in technologies and making batteries more ultra fast charging and running long will help with the adoption even faster. So yep.
Excellent. So, Mr. Secretary, we will set the stage here. We'll give you a little easier question. What are some of the things the state of Florida has done to kind of set the table and undertake some support for electric vehicles?
Well, yeah, this is an interesting space for the Florida DOT. It's new for us for certain. And when I started at DOT, I didn't imagine that this was one of the areas that I'd be speaking on in a year. But it's really fascinating what's happening. There's some interesting dynamics out there. For example, people look at rest areas as an area for the potential for deployment of EV charging stations, but actually federal law does not allow that. Federal regulations do not. But when we're on the turnpike, we're not bound by that. So we've been effective in deploying EV infrastructure along the turnpike. We've also been working closely with Florida DEP and other partners at state agencies. For example, DEP was leading the deployment of the VW settlement funds. We've recently been working with them on a NOFO that they put out for electric transit vehicles. So we through that, we anticipate probably 200 new EV buses coming into the transit properties throughout the state, which is, may not sound that big, but for transit properties, that's a pretty big deal. And we're doing it by kind of the program that DEP put together with us kind of bridges the gap between the cost of a diesel or CNG and an electric vehicle. So we're kind of bridging the gap to that transition. But more importantly, though, we're working. We developed the EV master plan last year. It was required by state statute. I know you were heavily involved in there, somewhat involved, I guess. So. And really, this framework was done in coordination with other state agencies, including the Public Service Commission and the DEO and DEP and others, and really focused on kind of where the gaps in the system are and where. And for us, it's about like what's the right place for a DOT or other state agency, as we know the market's going to drive this. But so what's the place for us to serve a public interest? And so, there's places the market's not going to go, and they're largely more rural areas or lower income areas. So it's like, how do you fill the gaps and facilitate investments that provide a public interest, like providing resiliency during emergency evacuation, things like that. So we'll be focused on, maybe mobile charging stations and providing, maybe our road rangers have the ability to help somebody out if they get stranded, and those kind of things. So we're going to focus in 4 areas. It's adaption, facilitate, educate, and coordinate. So it's kind of, working with our local partners and things like that. So it's a framework, but now what's, I think, very significant is that we, as most of you know, we now have some funding that's coming from the federal infrastructure bill in the tune of about $200 million over the next 5 years for EV infrastructure deployment. So we're in the process of developing that plan. We have the EV master plan, which is sort of that framework. Now, by August 1st, we have to provide to the US DOT a implementation plan. So the fact that we did the EVMP that was required by the Florida legislature puts us in a really great place, because we got a short fuse. We're going to use what we did in the EVMP, but then focus on how do we deploy this the dollars. And it's a little bit different. We had, there's some differences between what we had done in the EVMP versus what they're calling the NEVI, the National EV Infrastructure Plan, that we have to provide our state plan on. But again, it's going to focus on installation and purchase of charging infrastructure. Can subsidize some O&M. It's going to be focused on the interstate system first, and it has to be on alternative fuel corridors. We've been very aggressive about putting our interstates on the alternative fuels corridor inventory. We've got another round May 13th, so we're gonna continue to build that, and so those are some really critical things moving forward. So we do have some resources. It is different. There's like a 1 mile buffer from the interstate that those dollars can be used on. It's a little different from the 5 miles we identified in our plan. So we've got to make those kind of adjustments. Spacing between is like a minimum of 50. You're trying to find those gaps that you can close. So that's what we're working on. I would note also from a local perspective, there is some discretionary money in that bill that local communities can be looking at pursuing, about $2.5 billion. There's a lot of discretionary money in that bill, and it creates its own set of challenges. But we're always looking at how do we get our fair share of the dollars if they're out there, whether we like the way it's coming down or not. And so again, encourage communities to be thinking about how they can build partnerships to go after some of those funds.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you've got a great partner in the legislature. Bet he's handsome too.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm just saying. But at least Florida, relative to other states, seems like they're more forward-looking than a lot of the other states in terms of getting ready for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that master plan really put us in a great place.
All right, we'll go back to the rest of the panel for the next question, and we'll start down at the other end with Murat. What does everyone see as the top impediment to growing this market of the business? And I think starting technologically would probably be The right way to go. What do you think?
Yeah, so safety, and people have always this fear of if the battery is gonna bring any harm, it's gonna hurt the operator of the vehicle. For us, in the industrial, we are really focused on the safety the most overall, and also the fast charging, because we don't want to wait 24 hours to charge your car. To be able to put back on the road. So those are things that we really focus on, and the biggest thing that right now that affects is really with COVID. There are a lot of delays on the shipments and everything. So we are having some difficulties for our manufacturing and also building plants. So I would say from that perspective, for research and development, we need better turnaround. For the shipments, and also the microcontrollers and the chip industry is really slowed down. Those are the things that are really affecting.
Yeah, you've heard a lot of talk from folks, even traditional car makers like Ford, who have said cars are all done except for the one little chip that we're waiting on, and that's got to be multiplied tenfold in an electric vehicle.
Exactly.
Shane, what do you think? What's the top impediment?
Right now in the state of Florida, it's infrastructure. And the state's doing quite a bit to speed that process up. But just for instance, my house is 100 years old. I've got a 110 volt system in the house. If I plug in an electric vehicle, it's going to take 30 hours. And there's no way to speed that up unless I redo my electric system. And so things like that, the new houses being built, the new businesses, that's part of the process. They're at a higher level now. In other states, in Florida, in California, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, you have to travel, 5 to 10 miles before you hit a high-speed station, high charging station. In Florida, it's over 70. We have to get that number down, and that's the biggest, drawback right now. But if you want it, buy it.
Shane, we'll stick with you real. Okay. We'll stick with you real quick before we come back. We'll iron that question out. Don't worry, we got some other ones going. So you have the Hyundai Ioniq 5, and even your website says it's very limited availability. Is the reason because the parts are hard? Is it the demand high? What is it? Why is it? What's the impediment there?
Honestly, Hyundai didn't want to send electric vehicles to Florida. Because they didn't believe that they had the infrastructure to take it. Hyundai's had electric vehicles for over a decade. They've had plug-ins for over a decade. They just didn't send them to certain states because it didn't make sense if the infrastructure wasn't there. But everyone saw the Super Bowl and all of the electric vehicle commercials. When that happened, Hyundai sent every dealership in Florida 10 Ioniq 5s. And then we sold out of them in a week. So now we are getting a limited allocation. My allocation for this month was 5. I sold them before they got here. And so they're starting to move into that position, so we're going to get more vehicles. But honestly, when you drive a vehicle, you don't know what color it is. So don't tell me what color you want. I can get the vehicle, just don't worry about color.
That's great. Secretary, we'll wrap up that last previous question with you, which was, what do you think the top impediment is to growing this market in Florida from your perspective?
Well, it's interesting because, from our perspective, we're thinking about what the public sector can do, but really at the end of the day, it's what the market's going to drive. And so and I look at it more as a consumer and see, cost of vehicles, one thing. Range anxiety, I hear a lot about. Part of it's just education because the battery technology has gotten so much better that I think even though we have gaps in the system, these vehicles with DC fast charging can charge quickly. They have longer range. And so there's, I think, an education piece to that. But then others, that just the fact that we need more vehicles out there. I think when we did the EV master plan, we identified 17 light-duty cars and trucks that were available, projecting out to 2025, something like 81. And so it's like that range. So it's not like I got to choose between a Leaf and a Tesla. It's, there's a lot more out there. And I think that's gonna drive things. But also just that reality that, I think about the charging and I go, okay, well, I'll travel all across the state. And if I'm running from Tallahassee to Jacksonville, for example, and I stop at the Busy Bee, I stop and I gas up, I go in, do my stuff, 10-12 minutes, right? Well, an EV fast charging that's 30 minutes, like that's sort of, it's not quite there, but it's kind of a game changer in terms of what you can do. And then the other thing that I think I didn't realize until the other day is that these batteries kind of charge up. They don't charge up in a linear fashion. So it's like if you need 30 minutes, it's not charging up 50% in 15 minutes. It's charging like 70% in the first 15 minutes. So like in that 12-minute range that you're at the busy bee, you can actually get a lot of charge in. So those are the kind of things like we need the education, understanding, and let the market drive the demand.
All right, so Murat, let's go back down to you. We've heard a lot of the impediments to it. Make the economic case for either a person or a business to buy an electric vehicle in terms of length of time needed for payback, cost versus a traditional combustion engine. Why would you make the sell that this is the way to go?
Yeah, because right now we are really having breakthrough technologies in terms of like longer, better life. So the cost of ownership will go down with the batteries running longer. So right now we are working on technologies that can bring your battery life up to like 20, 25 years of lifetime based on your daily commit and everything. So the other thing is electricity is cheaper than gas, and it's good for the country. We all make our own electricity. We don't import electricity from outside. So given all that, from the safety point of view as well, with the public safety as well, like with the carbon monoxide emissions and everything. And also, like with the electric cars, you don't ever need to go to, go see a mechanic in terms of a lot of maintenance problems that you see with the combustion engine, you don't see with the electric vehicles. So it's pretty low cost in the maintenance as well. So given all that, the cost of ownership really is getting to break even with the electric vehicles with the, longer, better life and, low maintenance cost.
And your company, Microvest, is relatively new to Seminole County. So if you could just give a brief background about why you all chose Seminole County and the R&D you're doing and how you're involved.
Yeah, definitely. So Microvast is a pioneer in developing fast-charging batteries with, long battery life and superior safety margins. So we are founded in 2006. It's a publicly traded company. We are founded in Houston, Texas. We have offices in China, Europe, Singapore as well. We have about 1,800 employees globally, but more than 500 of whom are R&D engineers. So we do a lot of research and development. The reason really we wanted to start our technology center in Orlando is because we can access to the talent pool for STEM resources. So there are a lot of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, talent pipeline here in Orlando that we can easily access. The other thing is if you look at the other technology hubs, this is more affordable tech city. So it's good for newly graduated or young families. So given all that, I think it's a really good talent pipeline for the skill set that we are looking for. That's why we are here.
That's excellent. And so hats off to our folks in our education community who are continuing to supply that talent pipeline for us. We hear from site selectors all the time, whether we're at the Chamber, Orlando Economic Development Commission. We need to make sure we can fill our talent pool with those who are educated. And so it's nice that we're winning some of those, which is fantastic and a good choice for our community. Additionally, our structure that has no state income tax, and we got water on 3 sides, and that helps a lot of folks too, so that's great. All right, Shane, here's the question. Very frequently, high electric vehicle initial costs. Somebody walks on the lot, they don't know they want an Ioniq 5 yet, but they do. Make the case for them that over the cost of over the cost of the vehicle's lifetime, that it's actually going to be cheaper for them to own an electric vehicle.
It's, I'm a numbers guy, so, and you're only giving me a minute, but to make it real easy, if you're looking at a high-grade Camry, $38,000, you're looking at the SEL Ioniq 5, it's $47,000. Cost of maintenance, everything for 5 years. With the Ioniq, you're saving $1,400 a year. And that's compared to fuel to plugging in, Right now, if you went to Wawa in Winter Park to charge up your vehicle for 20 minutes, it's going to cost you $7. So I did 15,000 miles a year times 5 years. I put gas at $3.75 a gallon. I put the EV charger what it is right now. Like I said, you're actually making, you're saving, or yeah, either way, it's $1,400 a year that you're putting in your pockets compared to buying the electric versus the fuel combustion. So, like I said, if you want it, you're gonna get it. You know, just drive it, love it, buy it.
Well said, well said. Secretary, how is the growth of this market now affecting how the state plans its future transportation needs?
Well, really good question, and I kind of put it in the bucket of just innovation generally, because we're used to planning out 20-year plan, 5-year work program. We create it's very linear, and now we're the world of mobility in general is being disrupted by innovation every day, and so it forces a government agency like DOT to be more agile, and that's kind of a little bit of a challenge. It's just not what we're used to, and it's not how we plan, and we don't do, so we need to do more things like scenario planning and things like that. But we also, one of the things that scares us is like in the world of innovation, one of the key phrases that people like to use is fail fast. And in the world of government, that's like find a new job fast. So we're kind of like, how do you navigate this space? And for us, it's, we're looking at what are the potential impacts. I talked about the EV master plan. What are the impacts on emergency evacuation? But they also things like emerging mobility solutions, and then, the EVs in terms of, they're much quieter. What does it do for safety, pedestrian, interaction, things like that. So we've got to think about how all these things impact our transportation network, how people move through things like micromobility and eVTOL with electric urban air mobility and things like that. So it's totally changing our world, and it's really exciting, but it also means that we have to think differently. We have to be more agile, and we have to anticipate what are the potential implications. But then on the flip side, we need to have some reality check on how fast is this stuff really going to be adopted? How is the technology going to develop? What rate of adoption? And so now all of a sudden our 20-year vision has to be very flexible. We have to be able to sort of turn on a dime as we see those things happening. And that's the way that's how it's affecting our planning.
And so as a follow-up question, a lot of our revenue for Department of Transportation comes from gas tax. And that is a user fee that you pay more of the more you drive, because the more you fill up your tank. What happens in the future when more of these folks are electric vehicles and are not paying that tax? Are we going to go to more toll roads? Are we going to go to flat fees? Do you toll by plate? What happens?
That's sort of
I don't know the answer. That's not a loaded question. We've been struggling with it for years, and so if you've got a good idea, I'm listening.
So, and that's where we kind of like, okay, from a department standpoint, we're going to kind of put together the background. We're going to work with our partners in other states and understand the context of the different options. But at the end of the day, it really is kind of a political solution. So this is a partnership where I've got to be able to give you the best information possible. So because it's going to be driven by the policymakers at the political level, what the solution is. We've been very fortunate. The gas tax is sort of this elegant solution where it's tied to the use of the infrastructure. And we can do it at a national scale, a local scale, and a state scale. And so it's like when we're trying to find the replacement, we have to think about those interactions between the different geopolitical boundaries and making sure that ultimately these solutions mesh together. One of the things I would note on this is that, when we see the growth out, we have a conservative projection of 10% by 2035. Aggressive is 35. Even under those moderate and aggressive, we still see growth in gas tax up until about 2029, 2030, and then it starts to decline. The challenge is people are moving here in droves, and the cost of building infrastructure is going up, and the demand for the infrastructure is going up. So even though we won't see that decline, it's still going to impact us before that. What is interesting is you look over the last over even decades, there's been an erosion of that link between the gas tax, user fee, and the infrastructure investment. We're seeing more general revenue dollars. In this legislative session, we saw general revenue dollars. We're seeing it on the federal tax. We used to, it used to be that Congress would rob the highway trust fund for other stuff, and now actually it's running a deficit, and they're putting general fund dollars in. So that link is sort of eroding. Ultimately, we've got to find a solution of what's a sustainable way to pay for our infrastructure.
So you don't know either?
I don't, but I also know.
A lot of really, really bright people have been struggling with this for years, and you're right. At some point in the next 5 years, we're going to have to wrestle down what we do.
And there's like 20 different pilots happening across. So everybody wants us to do a pilot. We're like, well, how about we look at what these other pilots do, learn from them, understand the policy implications, and then we can kind of interact with you in terms of the policymakers to figure out what the right solution is.
No, it's perfect. It's better than us having to spend money on our own.
That's right.
All right, so Murat, we'll go back to you. This is similar to the site selection conversation. Other parts of the country are building clusters to help the EV industry. Places like Arizona's focus on manufacturing. Is there an opportunity for our community to use future growth to create a new economic hub? You have chosen here for a handful of reasons. What else can we do as a community to help support that?
I think we got a lot of support with the, Orlando, business development partners that we get, some incentives about creating jobs and all that. So we are so far happy with the, our initiatives, but definitely it helps with the access of this talent pool, like anything we can think about, bring awareness to these jobs and increase the awareness of the sustainability and clean energy. That really helps for more talents to take a look like what we do and also join our company.
Perfect. Well, we will do one last final question before we go into a speed round of Q&A. Shane, we'll start with you. What's the one thing you want everyone to take away from here, from your perspective, about this market and this industry?
Just let your anxiety go away. The technology now is in place. If you're not going to get stuck on the side of the road unless you're a bad driver. It's that simple.
Secretary, how about you?
I think one thing one of my observations is that, we live in a world where perception is reality, and when reality changes quickly, it's hard to make sure that perceptions follow. And so it's like, Shane says, we just got to continue to educate, make sure people are aware of where this technology really stands and what it can do and what the opportunities are.
All right, Murat, last word.
Okay, so as you all know, EV and battery industries are evolving very rapidly. So trust in that, things will improve in terms of the cost of total ownership of car and the safety, performance, and also the range. So.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much to our panelists this morning. This is spectacular. And we've got time for a handful of questions. I know everybody's got a personal. There we go. All right. Right off the bat. Microphone real quick.
Let's talk about the cost of the batteries, okay, versus, combustion cars. Like, let's say you're 2032, I want to buy a used electric car. Can you just buy a battery, put it in a used car, and will the batteries come down in price?
Yeah, definitely. There are companies already suggesting a program like that. They replace the batteries based on the mileage or whatever the terms that you have. Also, there are a lot of work is being done about the recycling of the batteries, and also using the batteries for the second life applications. So we are working on all those initiatives to make the the environment more. More friendly. So definitely there will be some programs in that nature to be able to swap the batteries. And also most of the battery manufacturers are now giving warranties about the batteries, that if you actually have problems with that, you can go for free replace your batteries. I don't know if Shane maybe can also chime in on that, how their warranty terms work. But as the technology advances, battery manufacturing companies also feel more comfortable giving those warranties.
Fabulous. Thank you. Great question. One in the back right here. Stand up.
Great speech, I have to say. So I'm looking for a car today, right? And you're saying it takes how long to get a car from wherever you take it from? I'm assuming Europe or China, right?
So how long?
Where is the car coming from? If I
Well,
purchase
the
one
Ioniq
today?
5 is built in Korea.
Korea. So you're saying it takes a long time to purchase one, right?
No,
Okay.
I'm not. I can get you one today if you need it today.
Okay,
Just
so
don't
if
worry
I-
about the color.
So I heard you saying that it's hard to get cars in the United States because of whatever reason, right? So if I do have an accident today, how are you getting the parts?
Well, parts, I mean, we have, Hyundai itself has got warehouses all over the United States filled with parts. And so we're in the same boat as everyone else when it comes to back-ordered parts. But if you get into an accident, that's why we have loaner vehicles.
And that's true, not to be a Hyundai commercial, but that's true of all the manufacturers that have electric vehicles. So whether it's General Motors or Audi or Tesla or whoever, they're stocked with that stuff as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That sold me.
One last question, far back. Hi.
Quick question. Does the battery ever get a memory problem? I'm from the wireless, my background is in wireless, and I remember when batteries of old developed a memory. You had to wait until they were fully decharged in order to fully charge. Is there a similar issue with electric car batteries?
I couldn't quite hear that. Like you are saying, like memory problem.
Yeah, I think the batteries of old, NiCad, if you will, had a memory issue where you had to wait until the battery was fully decharged in order to fully decharge, or you would develop this memory problem where it would never charge. I was curious to know if there's a similar issue with the batteries used by electric cars.
Not really, because like all the batteries needs to be certified for the road readiness. Like so, these are all the safety measures that we go check on the batteries. This is also can be like a safety issue. Like also for the memory issue, it's like more like a design of your battery, like a management system. Like if you are using the EPROMs, or if you are using like some additional stored memory on the battery management system. So we, from the memory point of view, I'm not sure like if you are talking about the storage of the information or you are talking about, anything else. So.
Perfect. Yeah, so if the battery goes down to 25, 30%, won't hurt to plug it back in and do it. All right, I think that's it. I know there's some extra questions, but I think the panelists will start to, will be here for afterwards in case you have any other specific questions. Let's thank them once again for being here. Much appreciated.